Mics and everything. Jeez.
We live?
We are live and unmuted.
Yeah, right
Does that
there.
mean we're live?
Don't worry about it. You'll see the share the whole thing is excited anymore. Lopsided. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Come on.
Hey, Pete.
Ah, you're
So intern.
Guilty.
All right.
Awesome, that's right. Second summer. We got last summer when we had that big shindig one. Yeah, big. Yeah, actually, yeah. That's you enjoy it?
I did, yeah.
How about right
now?
You're at Holton. Wow, we were just up there yesterday.
Yeah, I'm working on that downtown project.
So, good for you.
Big man around the state.
Sometimes I make it small. Tyson's my,
Yeah, you're telling me.
this is my governor, right?
Yeah. That's great.
I try to hire everybody.
How's school going?
Good,
Good.
good. I'm enjoying it.
Good.
Like, it's a bunch of learning, so it's going well.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Thank you.
Hey, when is this on mute?
Yeah.
Mute, no, it's great.
When it's green, it's live.
Boom, good.
We there? Is that,
How come nobody wants their mic on?
is that on? Peter? Is that on? Hello? Hello? That's on? Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. It's great to see this kind of turnout. We appreciate everyone showing up, and please sign in before you leave if you haven't already. We are here tonight to discuss a couple of Brownfields programs on behalf of projects that are occurring in the town of Millinocket. So part of this presentation is specific to the town of Millinocket's Brownfields assessment program that's being led by Peter and Grace. And the second part of the presentation will be discussing project status on behalf of our Katahdin, led by Steve Sanders and Shane Flynn. Peter, if you can bring us to those slides, we'll have some more introductions. Excellent, thank you. So next slide. So starting with the town of Millinocket's assessment program. And, oh yeah. So we've got some very distinguished guests with us here tonight, and we may never in this lifetime have this whole entire team assembled like we do. So we'll start by with the town's program, but again, Peter Jameson, I think you all know, Grace, Amber Wheaton, who's not here, but Amber previously supported the program, helped bring some projects into the program because Amber knows a lot of folks in town. Lorraine Byrne. Lorraine is US EPA's project officer. So for each of these projects, EPA assigns a project officer, as does Maine DEP with a project manager, and that's Ted Wolferts. Ted? I'm Nick Sabatine. So I serve as the qualified environmental professional on behalf of the town and our Katahdin's program, and act as the project manager and the primary contact on the project. Aaron Martin to my left is a Maine licensed geologist, and he's done much of the assessment work in town, along with Caitlin Keaty, who's not here tonight because she recently had a baby and is home with her baby. So our goal with all of these projects, and EPA and DEP will certainly attest to this, is to establish a long-term sustainable program for the town and for the region. And as we all know, the town of Millinocket and the former Great Northern Paper Mill site, now termed One North, are hand in hand in this path moving forward. There we go. Some statistics on the town's program. So it's a 2023 grant award. It's a national competition. So Millinocket submitted a grant in, I'd say, October or November in 2022. The grant was awarded in 2023. It's a community-wide assessment program, which means that these funds can be used on any site throughout the entire community. The grant period is from July of 23 until September 30th of 27. The total budget for the project was $500,000. There's no match required, which is wonderful. And there's extreme interest in Millinocket's program, which in my experience in practicing in this area for the last 15, 20 years, to be very frank, you never know in rural Maine how accepting and how much interest you may have in a program. As an example, years ago, we started a program in Piscataquis County, and it took a good year and a half to get that program off the ground. In Millinocket, that was not the case. I mean, we were out of the gate immediately. And again, it was due in part to the good work of Peter and Amber and their ties to the community, their knowledge of projects and sites in the community. And it just spread like wildfire. So we ended up doing a small project for Emery Lee, the contractor in town on Central Street. And Jimmy Lee talked to others, and it got the hospital into the program, the fab shops with Ed and Fred. So, I'll talk more about this, but it's been a booming program to the point that we're going to expend the funds much earlier than the 2027 deadline, which has always been our goal. Because we've got such depth in our team here tonight, I'd like somebody from EPA to talk to us about what a brownfield actually is. What does that word mean?
What brings us all here together. Thank you so much for having us. I'm so happy to see all of you here. So a brownfield is basically a site, if you look at it and you're a redeveloper or you're just going through town, if there's real or perceived contamination that might inhibit redevelopment or your purchase of that property. So that could include hazardous materials, hazardous building materials like asbestos or lead paint, if there was a tank at the site and there's been a leak, if you've had a dry cleaner there, anything, all of those unknowns that's going to say, oh, I might not want to buy that, that's a brownfield. So brownfield isn't a Superfund site, so much larger, usually in nature and longer scale project. Anything that has any kind of like enforcement action by EPA or the state, we're not going to touch that either. That's not a brownfield at that point. And then anything that the US government owns, also not a brownfield. So there are about almost around 500,000 brownfield sites around the US, and that number kind of fluctuates. And as we kind of redevelop and leave some stuff behind, that number is going to grow and ebb and flow a little bit. So we were authorized as a program in 2002, and we've kind of been off running ever since. So this boosted funding for assessment and cleanups throughout the entire country. Basically, our funding, we work with both states and tribes, and that's in a direct partnership role. And then also it clarifies the liability under Superfund law as well. So we work with TED and the Mass DEP folks, along with other state agencies and tribal agencies, along with towns, nonprofits, planning organizations, where we basically fund assessment and cleanup programs like the town's program and like our Katahdin's cleanup program as well. So we work directly with them through assessment grants, cleanup grants, RLF grants, or our revolving loan programs and multi-purpose grants. And yeah, there are partners and we work directly with them, and we do cooperative agreements, which means we're actually here on the site working with you all. So
I should have mentioned earlier that EPA typically and DEP also, DEP more frequently because Ted happens to be a resident of Millinocket, but EPA typically comes to the area, the Katahdin region, about once a year or more, depending on the number of projects. And that's, I think, hugely in part of the massive commitment that EPA has made on behalf of these projects, many of them in mill towns that have had experienced closures and are trying to redevelop work opportunities and redevelop these sites. So it's wonderful to have them here tonight. Which of these sites are brownfield? Jim's Dry Cleaners. There we go. All of them. Yeah. Jim's Dry Cleaner, as we heard Lorraine say, gas stations, the church. These are all actual sites from Maine. The church had PCB caulking and asbestos and hazardous building materials. The one up in the upper right-hand corner is Gardner's Water Street, which is equivalent of your Penobscot Ave. But they were proposing to do some infrastructure in the street and in this area of the city, up gradient of their downtown. They had a history of multiple gas stations and dry cleaners, and they thought that when they went to construction, there was potential for them to have to halt construction in the event they encountered any of that contamination. So we did a program at night, did some drilling down the street to confirm or try to either confirm or dismiss that fear of petroleum contamination in the street, and found that there wasn't. And so we were trying to be proactive on the city's behalf in that construction. The admin building in the lower right-hand corner has received Brownfields funds. Lorraine touched on this, but there are several types of grant funding buckets with the US EPA. So the town has the assessment program right now currently. There are site-specific cleanup grants, and we've got multiple examples on behalf of our Katahdin. But a cleanup grant would occur if, as an example, the former Stearns High School, just as an example, if it came into the program in the future, and it was found that the boiler was wrapped in asbestos, there was a lot of asbestos in the building construction, to the point that it was significant money. If it was held by a not-for-profit, you could submit for a cleanup grant for that site specifically. And those typically have run in the range of $500,000. They will be in the future, we believe. Under the Bill Act funding, these grants were significantly higher. There were $4 million opportunities and $5 million opportunities, which have been very significant on the former mill site. There are revolving loan funds, RLF grants. The state of Maine has an RLF grant. Eastern Maine Development Corporation has an RLF grant. And those ultimately are EPA monies, but EPA provides that money to those entities, and they can make loans on behalf of projects and developers. They can be in the form of a loan or a grant. And the loans are typically low interest, and in today's financial markets, their terms are very attractive, typically at 1 or 2% finance charges. There are training grants, there are state and tribal response programs, and then there's also a targeted brownfields assessment program where EPA can come in and do assessments on behalf of a municipality or an owner. And we've got an example of one of those that I'll speak to. I'm having mouse issues here. Millinocket's community-wide assessment. Peter, did you just turn that off and I turned it back on? I don't know. Can you do that, or is it fine? It's fine. Yeah, okay. All right. I'm challenged. So when you start a program, you tend to do community outreach and education, these types of sessions. It's very important to EPA that they know that their money is getting put to good use, but also that the community is involved. They understand the projects. There's an opportunity to ask questions about any of the work that's being done. We inventory sites, which means that we could do windshield site surveys, driving around the community saying, yep, that checks the box as a brownfield site. It's a mill site. It's a former gasoline station. Doesn't mean that it is or that it'll come into the program, but it's got potential to be in the program. And then we do what's referred to as environmental site assessments with phase 1s and phase 2s, which really are environmental due diligence. With a phase 1, you do kind of a desktop review of the history of the site. So you research DEP databases, spill reports to try to develop the history of what actually occurred on this site. And you may come up with some recognized environmental conditions that mean, you could have tanks in the ground, you could have, they could have leaked over time. And if you classify those as a recognized environmental condition, in the phase 2, you can either confirm that those are issues or dismiss that those are issues. And you do that by doing sampling and investigation. And that includes or can include test pitting, where you actually do excavation and you screen the soil in the field to determine if there's any potential for contamination. Then you send those samples, those soil samples, off to a laboratory for testing. You can do borings where you install monitoring wells and test that groundwater also. And then a really nice aspect of the program is that you can do remedial or cleanup planning and reuse planning, which means you take all the information from the phase one and the phase two, and you summarize it into what's referred to. It's really a feasibility study, but the terminology for it is an analysis of brownfields cleanup alternatives. So in that document, you talk about what the remediation could be, and you actually put costs to it. So you as a developer have a document that says, okay, there's $200,000 of asbestos abatement and $500,000 of petroleum cleanup. Or, I really thought this site was highly contaminated, and at the end of the day, it's not. There aren't issues. So these tools are very helpful for developers and end users of these sites. Again, this is some of the, I spoke to many of these, but this is just the process that we typically will go through with an assessment program. Yeah, I covered a lot of that. The phase one follows an ASTM standard, so there are things that the report needs to include. Yeah, with the phase two, we do the laboratory testing and create that report. I didn't mention
Hey, Nick,
vapor intrusion.
you might want to tell folks that these documents are for public too.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. So all the documents that we create as part of this program get submitted to EPA and DEP for their review, and then they are considered public documentation. So available to the public for review. Thanks, Ted. And to even further that, if you have a site that's been through a brownfields program like this and has received that rigorous review, it's very I'm not a developer, but I would think it's very valuable to bring that documentation to, a financial team looking to support a project like this, because the state also offers a program, the VRAP, the last bullet, which provides state liability protection. So in taking a site through the phase one and phase two and the cleanup and reuse planning, you submit a series of documents to DEP. And once they review and concur or make comments to those documents and the cleanup has occurred, you get a VRAP certificate of completion, which again has a lot of authority or power with the development team. And this is describing some of that reuse planning that we do in the ABCA. And the photo to the right is the former wastewater treatment facility over by the clarifier on the east side of our Katahdin's property. There are multiple benefits. Some of these I've discussed, but it helps you confirm or dismiss if there are environmental issues on the site. It helps to facilitate the transfer of a property. It actually makes properties more marketable when you have these documents in hand, because oftentimes a financial or lending institution will ask these kind of questions. They'll ask if a phase one and phase two have been completed. And if they don't, they typically are privately funded. And a phase one will often cost, $4,000 to $5,000. A phase two could be, depending on the level of complexity and the size of the site, a phase two could be anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 to $75,000 to $250,000 on a huge mill site. So it's real money that helps reduce the environmental risk and the unknowns that could be associated with a site. Yeah, and you avoid the potential of passing those liabilities on to future users. Where's my mouse? Mouse, anyone? There it is. This is just a few examples of sites here in town. So 143 Medway Road was a site that a residential property that was assessed by the town. We identified some limited asbestos that was abated, and the building was ultimately demolished by the town. So the Brownfields program assessed the property. The town did the abatement and the demolition of that site. 150 Penobscot Ave, the Rush property just across the street here. We've completed a phase one on that. Hopefully in time that'll go to phase two also. 181 Penobscot Ave, the bank building, we did a phase one on that. And unfortunately that that burned, but it is in reuse now, and it is an attractive building that's been constructed on the site. 196 Penobscot Ave, again, right across the street from us here, was the former Wilson building that the Northern Forest Center took over. Baby Ruthie's is now located in that building. That particular site, we did a phase one. We identified the potential for a tank to be in the exterior in the back of the building. In the phase two, we were able to determine that there was a tank, and we took it through Maine DEP's closure process and properly closed the tank out with flowable fill and got that certification done. So the project was able to continue, and again at no cost to the Forest Center. 316 Penobscot Ave, 42 Aroostook Ave was assessed and ultimately demolished by the town too. The projects in blue, by the way, are projects that have had some form of reuse. The Emery Lee site, we did a phase two on that property. They've got a couple of tanks that are going to come out of the ground in August of this year. So the funds allow us to sample around the tanks, determine if they leaked, and remove the tanks to assess beneath them, and pays for that process. We've done work with the town's money at the EME biofuels site in the Greenfields portion of the One North site to help. Again, they came to our Katahdin and said we need to do our environmental due diligence, and the town was able to pay for that.
Sorry, that's me.
Jim's Dry Cleaner. Everybody's familiar with Jim's on Aroostook Ave. That site had been assessed in the past by EPA and DEP under various brownfields programs. We were able to do some additional work there, abated the building. There had never been any sampling conducted beneath the slab, and we weren't able to do that without demolishing the building. So the program paid for that work. And we're now in the process of taking that through the VRAP process that I described earlier.
Nick, can I jump in for a moment?
Certainly.
Just want to point out that, the successes of this program with the properties in town, have alleviated, many years of frustration and stress and community outreach over several of these properties. The Jim Dry Cleaning property was, sitting there in that state for decades, and is now a clean, eventually sellable site. And then over on Medway Road, again, many years of dilapidated, dangerous property, which has been, thanks to Brownfields and the town, cleaned up, and as of just a couple of weeks ago, bid it out to a nice young family who's building a new home on the property in the coming year or so. So, the impact is real, and these things take a lot of time, but it's well worth the work and all that happens behind the scenes, because it is improving our town. So.
Yeah, for sure. And well said, Peter. I mean, the blighted properties present, trespass hazards. They're a drain on the police force when there are issues with those buildings. Each of those buildings that we were in had, it's not that they were occupied, but there definitely were trespassers. And so it's great to get them cleaned up and in some cases demoed and available, because they're on municipal services, and they should be reused and put back on the tax rolls. The Golden Road Fab Shop is an example of the targeted brownfields assessment. So as I said earlier, because of the interest in the program, the funding will be drawn down before it sunsets in 27. And so as a result, we reached out to EPA, and they've got some of their own funding. So they're going to do that work on the Fab Shop site, or the Golden Road Fab Shop site. The Katahdin Ave site is in the town's program. The Millinocket Regional Hospital is receiving funds to do some phase 2 work and also remove their tanks. Again, that Emery Lee and the hospital will occur mid mid-August. The contractors are scheduled for that. And then this is a different type of project, but just it highlights the types of work that can be completed with them. At the plaza, Rick Lax is working with that as a property manager on that site. And he's just trying to determine where the infrastructure comes into the buildings, the municipal infrastructure. And he's got some old plans, but it's hard to discern where things are. And there's a lot of underground utilities. So under the town's program, we're hiring an independent utility locator to help him map that out for the reuse that they're planning on that site. I think we've talked a lot about the values to the program, or the values of the program to the town and the area. Yeah, it's wonderful to get these sites cleaned up and reused. And the last thing I'll say, and certainly take any questions, but EPA has an annual competition. Again, it's a national competition. And with the town's authorization and approval, I think there's real good potential to submit. You have to have 70% of your current grants spent down, or that was the previous guidelines. And if that occurs, Millinocket could be eligible to submit for another assessment grant this fall. Anything on assessment in town? All right. Go to our Katahdin. This is the team. Sean DeWitt, Steve Sanders. Raise your hand. Shane Flynn. Jim Byrne. Jim is our project officer on behalf of our Katahdin. Ted Wolferts is our PM. Same role. Jamie Madore is our lead engineer. Aaron Martin, senior geologist on the assessment projects, and Anthony Pace is another one of our engineers. And I got to introduce TJ, who's an intern with us and has worked on a few of these projects. Our Katahdin may be one of, or maybe the most successful programs in Region 1, which is the New England states, potentially in the country. It's Jim's nodding his head in agreement, so he would know that. But our Katahdin's first foray into the Brownfields program was in 2017 for their 230 Penobscot Ave cleanup. And at that time, cleanup grants were $200,000. So that was the first grant that I think Steve and Sean wrote before. That's right. You were 18. Yeah. Sean DeWitt takes the credit for that one. In 2020, we were introduced to our Katahdin, myself personally, by Shane Flynn. Shane and I had worked together for 20 or 25 years in a previous life, and Shane was becoming engaged in these projects, and I had the fortunate opportunity to meet with the our Katahdin folks, and that's when it all kind of took off. In 2019, in the fall of 2019, Nick Hodgkins from Maine DEP, Nick, raise your hand, and Chris Redmond, another Brownfields professionals from Maine DEP, agreed to fund a phase 1 on behalf of our Katahdin. And that was some of the documentation that we needed. Pieces of prior phase 2s had been completed on the site, and those are requirements to submit the cleanup grants. So in 2020, the Great Northern Paper site received a site-specific assessment. So the same assessment type program that the town now has, but that was specific for the One North site, a $350,000 assessment. And in the same year, we submitted a $500,000 cleanup for the admin building. So those were the two grants that kicked off on-site activity. Immediately with the 2020 assessment, we started, I'm getting ahead of myself because I got this on another slide, but so I'll skip that. This is just, a history of the statistics of our Katahdin's program. So for several years, the cleanups had a max of $500,000. In 2023 was the first Bill Act funding year. So the tank farm that we're working on right now received a $1.5 million cleanup grant. In FY 2024, the wastewater treatment lagoons received a $5 million cleanup. And in 25, the roll storage building, which hangs off the side of the Paper Machine 11 building, received a $4 million grant. And just recently, the end of June, I think the announcements were that the Paper Machine 11 building received another $4 million grant. So in total, Katahdin has received close to $17 million of EPA direct funding. There's other funding sources from those RLFs that stack on another 3 million or so. So, 20 plus or minus $1 million have come to Millinocket. The program strategy has always been to assess the sites that have the highest potential for development. So when Katahdin received those $350,000 in assessment funds, we just didn't willy-nilly start to do phase ones and phase twos everywhere. It's a 1,400 acre site across the site. We were very focused on how we were using those funds based on the tenant recruitment work that Katahdin was doing and the areas of the site with the highest potential for reuse. And one of our other goals was to spend it to establish a track record with EPA where they couldn't not fund the projects because we were spending the money down as quickly as we could, but at the same time having results with those funds deployed. So on many of the grants that Katahdin has had, we've spent them down in a year or two, which is, with a 4 to 5 year grant period, somewhat unheard of. And our process has been to hit the pedal on the right and not let our foot off of it. These are some of the examples with that first assessment. And then we got another site-specific assessment in 2022 that was on that sheet. But the steam plant site, the wastewater treatment plant, the wastewater treatment lagoons, the garage, the wood yard, Paper Machine 11. Some of these assessments were focused on building materials rather than the exterior portions of the buildings. And then again, we were able to write those ABCAs and really understand what the amount of money required to clean the sites up, or the various portions of the site up. And here's some of what's been completed since that time. The admin building has been abated. It's ready for reuse. The research building and pilot plant have been abated and ready for reuse. Same for the engineering building and the purchasing wing. Katahdin has numerous prospects coming through and having interest in these buildings. The tank farm, we initiated that 2024 grant last year in removing a lot of the rail infrastructure that fed the steam plant. That was all removed last year. And right now, this week, we're focused on the tanks themselves. Got another slide that talks about that. The wastewater treatment plant, we've been working on that project for the last couple of years. Again, 2024 grant, immediately that year, we put the project out to bid, selected a contractor, and went at that project. It's about 20% or so of that project remaining. Roll storage, Anthony and Jamie are in design of that right now. The cleanup of that'll go out to bid later this year. And Paper Machine 11, as I said, was just awarded. That cleanup grant was just awarded, and Katahdin, as they do on all these projects, are required to procure those services competitively. So they write an RFP and RFQ to bid that work. These are just some before and after pictures of the admin building. When we went into the admin building, it had some mold issues, asbestos abatement, lead-based paint issues. We took the building down to the studs. Research and pilot plant, we toured that today with EPA and DEP, and previously that roof had failed. Maybe with the exception of admin, every building on the entire site was designed to shed heat because of the steam plant fed heat throughout the entire mill site. So they all had interior draining roof drains that when they stopped being serviced by the steam plant, all that infrastructure failed and the roofs failed and had significant mold in them. The pilot plant was abated. And same with engineering. Engineering had more internal moss and mold growth than any mill building I'd ever been in. Anything that was cellulose grew mold in that building. It was a pretty hazardous environment to walk in it, and this is what it looks like now, down to the studs. It is a solid building, and with great reuse potential. And then at the end of the project, given the mold issues, we were able to, the mitigation measure for that was to re-roof it. So the entire E&R, including pilot and the purchasing wing, received a new roof. So that building's entirely weather tight now. The tank farm was a 2013 cleanup grant. And so the picture in the middle was the hole in that was cut last week by our subcontractor EnviroServe. And I created this presentation too many days ago, but this week they are amending that number 6 oil with sawdust. It's being shipped to Juniper Ridge for ultimate disposal. And they're doing that with a skid steer in each tank, scraping the number 6 out and live loading it into lined roll-off containers that are shipped down to Juniper Ridge. And they're doing that in both of the tanks. This is the picture on the right is the interior of that tank. And Joel Butler, who is a demo contractor, one of the larger contractors in the state, he was engaged for the demolition of the wastewater treatment building and the clarifier. Joel's mobilizing back to the site in early August, and he's got the shears to shear these tanks down. He says in 2 weeks he'll have both tanks on the ground, loaded, and on barges in Searsport. And he's doing that work at no cost to our Katahdin for the scrap value of the steel, which is significant. The wastewater treatment plant was deemed potentially one of, or if not the biggest liability in the site because it's just massive. And there was a period of time that we just looked at it and said, what the hell are we going to do with this thing? So our Katahdin wrote a congressionally directed spending grant that was awarded. And we did a lot of due diligence with that money. The timing of it was perfect. It was administered by HUD. HUD, right, Steve? Yeah. And then we utilized a DECD, Maine Department of Economic and Community Development, grant and loan for the abatement and demolition of the sludge handling building on the left. That's the project that Joel Butler completed on our behalf. That was done through the winter of, I think, 23, if my memory's right. And we started readying the site for Great Northern Salmon's project that you'll hear more about. But the upper left-hand corner is the wastewater treatment lagoons in operation. The bottom left is the kickoff of that project. Again, this was a $5 million Bill Act grant that was funded in 2024. A lot of this work was completed in 24, including the hydraulic dredging in the upper right-hand corner. And the primary remedial solution goal on this project is you see the smaller lagoon that is darker color in the upper left-hand corner. That represents about 5 acres of what was the settling lagoon. The rest of the lagoon was aerated, and we refer to that as the aeration lagoon, and that represents 22 acres. So 27 acres of lagoons, without question, the largest system like this in the state of Maine. And the solution is to clean out the 22 acres and consolidate it into the 5 acres, and it will remain on site and be covered and capped. So that's been a largest brownfields project that I've worked on. I mean, significant effort. The lower right-hand corner is what it looks like today. So that's kind of mid-construction. This is some of the equipment that Michael's, one of the subcontractors, utilized on the site. So The left-hand side are a couple of, well, 3 silos that they hauled Portland cement into daily. And then the orange equipment are pressure, what they refer to as pressure feeders, and they're on crawler tracks. And in the middle photo, you can see one of those crawlers behind the excavator. So that would crawl behind the excavator, injecting Portland cement into that mixing head that's the orange piece on the end of that excavator boom. It's like a big egg beater. And they would amend 5 to 7% Portland cement into that mix. And then they would truck it with Emery Lee's off-road trucks into the settling lagoon, which is in the bottom right-hand corner. And that material, once it's set up and dried, is stable. You can drive a pickup truck on it. This is the roll storage machine shop that I said is in design. The big long building. Can I do this with the mouse? Yeah. So this building is PM11, is paper machine 11. This is roll storage. And roll storage has some really unique amenities. It's got, I mean, there are 50-ton cranes in PM11, but also one in roll storage that Katahdin has had some developers that have potential interest in that. We are right now in the design looking to abate the building. There's asbestos in the roof, in the roofing components, and complete that cleanup. It also, that $4 million also includes cleanup of the machine shop or the machine shops. So am I the only one that can't see that mouse? Here it is. That's the machine shop. So these areas, these areas of the complex. So if I had the ability to draw a straight line across here, everything there to the bottom of the image or to the west is really old infrastructure, part of not original mill construction, but probably 1920s construction. The North Train Shed is an example of that. And it's really failing and unfortunately can't be preserved. So we're looking to remove all those buildings with the funds that Katahdin currently has. Paper machine 11, newly awarded, and Katahdin will be in the process of procuring that. That's in the yellow up above. We just looked at that. And that's it. Happy to answer any questions about any of the Brownfields projects and what we're doing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. The only reason I'm interrupting, Steve is going to take over here, is that there are probably many people here and people that are on the video who are interested to hear about the salmon farm. So we absolutely intend to give and Steve will do it, but give an overview of what has been happening at the salmon farm. And we're very grateful for the attendance here of Marianne Ness next to me, who's the CEO of the Great Northern Salmon, and Eric Heim, who's the chairman, and Kevin, who's with them, who's going to oversee the nursery, if you like, at the farm. So and between what Steve or I can talk about and what Marianne and others can talk about, we will answer all questions that come up and give a comprehensive view, which we have not commented on this up to this point for good reason, and but tonight we will be talking about this in detail. Thanks.
Thanks, Shane. So yeah, as Nick mentioned, I'm going to focus on the lagoons. So the lagoons represented our biggest and like long-term liability when we took over the site. What are we going to do with a certainly not in its current function, that size of a wastewater treatment plant. And so the CDS funds, we just threw a dart on the wall and said, if we got some flexible funding, let's just start thinking about potential reuses and let that direct us of where we go. And shortly after that, Eric and Marianne were looking for sites to locate their aquaculture farm, And we took them to a lot of sites all over the site, and we just had to take them over to lagoons to show them, kind of the early assessment work we were doing over there. And they came back to us and said, the lagoons are where we want to locate the business, which was now a really pleasant surprise for us, because now with a industrial reuse that's going to attract capital investment, employ people, it makes our grant applications so much more competitive than to just remediate them and then turn it back into a green space. It's perfect for some sites, but for an industrial site, the whole goal is to attract capital investment, employ people. And so we were delighted with that, and we were very successful in raising a lot of funds towards that project. So we started in earnest designing that site in 2023. And I remember in January 2024, we had our first meeting with a whole group at DEP, because nothing like this had ever been undertaken in the state, closing a wastewater treatment plant of this site. We knew the method, because some earlier studies had said, the best thing is an in-situ remediation. So keeping the sludge on site was the most feasible. And but we worked with CV Mahar, and we really got a detailed design and a very well developed package for contractors to bid on, because who are the experts in this field? And we were very successful in getting attraction from 7 or 8 companies, both U.S. and Canada, to do this. And the one firm put an alternative method that we had looked at during our design, which was mixing the sludge with Portland cement. Our benchtop studies told us that was taking too much time, and we didn't think it was going to be feasible, but we left it out there. The contractor had enough experience. They said it will work because we've done it before, and that's definitely the way to go. And we knew it was going to be a cheaper alternative if anyone could do it. So we awarded a contract to NRC Environmental in like June of 24. And the only variable in the contract was how much Portland cement they're going to need. And we said, listen, we can't have any cost escalations. We need to de-risk this. We need to have a fixed value. And so come back and tell us how much Portland cement you'll do it for, regardless of what you run into on the field. So they came up with that. We increased the contract award amount by that amount, and we had a lump sum contract and off the races. So fall of 2024, that group mobilized, and they were able to dredge all the sludge out of the 5-acre lagoon into the bigger lagoons, so we could start prepping that 5-acre lagoon to receive the rest of the amended material. So spring of 2025, after the winter and it thawed, they started in earnest, April-May timeframe, and started amending the sludge in the 22 acres lagoons, transporting that into the 5-acre lagoon, and things were going very swimmingly until about late summer. We got about 7/8 of the way done that project, and the prime contractor had hired a subcontractor to do majority of the work, certainly all the purchasing of the Portland cement and the amendment. And that contractor came to us and said, we've reached our contracted amount of amendment, and we need a $2 million change order to move forward. And we said, well, we have a lump sum contract with the prime contractor. And so that raised a huge issue for everyone. There's no, the fault lays with the prime contractor. They signed a lump sum contract with us. They went out and procured a sub by the yard. They reached by the yard limit, and they said we can't continue the work. So that has caused huge repercussions for the whole project. We had to stop. We were delighted with the work by the subcontractor. Absolutely delighted. They worked. Yeah. And another primary sub was Emery Lee. They were in charge of, after the sludge got amended, transporting it to the 5-acre lagoon. Both those subs worked to the T, said what they were going to do. And Shane and I have been in negotiations with the prime contractor since last October, trying to work this out, because we don't want to, we want to be able to move on, and we can't move on while this is in dispute. So while it's been a hiccup, and that's why work has not continued this year on the lagoons. But there is so much little work left remaining for the remediation of the sludge that Great Northern Salmon is going to just roll that into their larger development project when that can move forward. So, you know, it's really kind of a case of a $16 billion company being able to go slow, and we have no revenue, no ability, some EPA money to fight it out in legal fees. It's not in court yet. It won't go to court, but it's been a struggle and a setbacks for the whole program. The company did put a mechanics lien on the property, but they have not followed suit. And so that lien is now unenforceable. So that's one relief. But it's just been kind of a stick in the mud.
My mother-in-law said she was from Mr. County. She said I have an outdoor voice, so. Okay, so may not be my fault. Anyway, I just, everything Steve says, obviously accurate, great that we have Marianne right here. This has been a great project, and it will be a great project, but I think that thank you.
Indoor voice.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Appreciate it. But the thing that I would just say is that the amount of work that was done in preparation for this project was enormous. And Steve mentioned, when things started, but years of planning went into this, and a great deal of engagement with DEP in particular and EPA, and the engineering group and the geology group from CVMR, and they basically put a fantastic contract together. So there's nothing wrong with the contract. It's important that when Steve says it's not going to go to court, the reason it won't go to court is that the primary contractor doesn't have a case. Now they say they do, but they don't. I mean, it is black and white. Now you can never say anything's 100%, but we have a very strong contract. Jamie Medora, who's here, was the person who put that together, and she did a very, very good job on it. So, but what has happened is we're subject to bullying activity that has taken place. And those of us who've worked at big companies know what that can feel like and do, depending on which side you're on. We thought that by tonight we might be able to say we've reached a point where it looks like we have settlement. We think we're very close, but we're not there yet. And until we're there, it's a little like when people talk about development here, I say we have nothing till it's in the ground, and we don't have a settlement till it's written. But we certainly have been working hard on it, and I think a lot of people locally have asked a lot of questions about what's happened, and there's been a lot of rumors, and it's been difficult for us. It's been difficult for Steve. It's been difficult for me because we didn't want to talk about this because we didn't want to complicate things any further with NRC. But at this point, it has to be addressed, and we've made that very clear to people. We're not going to keep people in the dark about what's happening here, and having said all of that, we feel very positive, and Marianne has been wonderful to work with, and the team have been. They're extremely good at what they do, and having Marianne and Eric here this evening just demonstrates that further questioning that people might have will be answered. We're not going to editorialize on what we think about the other party, but we're going to be very factual. We're going to just say this is what it is, and we're talking about it now. So, Marianne, would you like to speak? I'll just turn this off if I can.
There you go. Well, that's true. And of course, I mean, it has complicated things for our Katahdin, but also for Great Northern, because having a property to lean on and a conflict makes it really hard to raise capital for construction. So that has delayed that process somewhat, but we're still working on it. and we're hopeful that we will find a solution to it. We have to admit that having to import about half of our capital spend from Europe has been challenging to determine the actual capital budget right now with tariffs going on and off and inflation. But we're working through that as well. But that and this delay will of course delay this project a little bit. But as Shane said, our amended or updated plan is to include the last 6 weeks of remediation into the early construction phase, because we will still need to do some excavation and pipe work. So that's the plan, and we're continuing to work with 2 different banks at this moment. It's not easy, and I don't really have a very specific timeline because this has delayed us. We were forced to reset the whole project and wait out the lien until we could go back into the market because it was just too volatile. But we're here now, and we hope we can get started with this, once we have raised the capital. And that's also, we have, Kevin still here in town, and he's a local resident. And we have Mick. Mick is currently, since this is delayed and there's nothing for him to do until we get this back on track, he's currently traveling, but that's only a temporary, situation. So he's still part of this community. So any questions? We're, happy to answer any questions that you have. Yeah. When you can buy it? Well, maybe Kevin, you could say a little bit about how long it takes to raise the salmon.
Once we get eggs in, it'll be about 2 years from the time we get.
Your apartment.
Well, that's a full-size salmon. I mean, probably there might be some samples before then, huh?
We're still very excited and robust. If you follow the aquaculture industry at all, you'll notice that there's a lot of pressure, and they're going away from these sea-based pens for raising Atlantic salmon. Certainly, in a lot of places, British Columbia, which is a big production area, is moving away. Europe's starting to go that way. The industry knows that land-based is the future. And there are still technical challenges and all that, but they know that that's where they must migrate to. And the big benefit of the marketplace in America is that we currently import now more than 95%, 97% of Atlantic salmon that's consumed gets imported. So if you can grow it domestically here, you are days in advance of any other salmon coming on a perishable item, which is a huge advantage, let alone flying salmon around the world for consumption. So
it's a very good business case for the U.S. The U.S. doesn't have a large aquaculture industry for salmon. So, and there's been a lot of attempts for projects here in the U.S. We're the only one left actually in the U.S. right now. Last man standing or first man out. There has been one large project in Florida, which is probably considered the excuse my language, the worst fuck up in this industry. That hasn't helped here in the US. So we've been dependent on going to Europe and then also to the Middle East to look for funding, because there is a lack of domain expertise here in the US. It is politically a little bit more complicated to go to Europe right now because of the political situation. But there's still, everyone sees that the U.S. market is a great opportunity, and salmon prices too, because we don't have to fly it and pay for customs and handling and air freight. It's much better in the U.S., although it's a little bit more expensive to build here. So business case looks good, but the market is tough right now, and this didn't help. This delay really complicated it and took away a very good, window for us in terms of funding. So yes, but
I don't know if you mentioned the name of that organization is called Sapphire, if you follow it. And I think the screw up started when they selected a site in Florida that they're bringing water out from the ground that's at 80 degrees for a fish that needs to grow in about 60-degree water. So yeah, it's had its challenges, and it's hurt everyone's efforts trying to move this land-based aquaculture development forward.
Start the stuff together. They had a great idea, but their design was weak. Planning was very weak. And I could do an outside voice too. But yeah, it was just, it was in the case of Atlantic Sapphire, it was, again, a great idea in a bad place for doing what they were going to try to put forth. And yeah, it was, I have a slight bit of firsthand knowledge. My son actually worked there for 1.5 years. And he told me that he was done with aquaculture with Atlantic Sapphire because he did not want to shovel dead bodies anymore. So that the way that they were set up was not well. The case that we have, I don't want to be so bold, but the team that we have is probably one of the best that has ever been put together. Thankful to these two folks here seeking us out, but yeah, we're looking forward to getting this going to show that this is the way to grow salmon.
Well, I think we just hope that for those people who aren't able to attend this evening, but do have questions, because I get questions all the time, and I'm sure Steve gets them too, and others within our Katahdin. We're not going to editorialize and add points and, let our frustrations boil over and suggest things that we don't want to be saying. But we do want people to understand what's happened, want people to understand that we deal with things professionally. We did to bring us this far. We continue to do it. Others may not be quite as professional, and that's that's where we are. And hopefully we'll work through that. But we want to make sure people in the town understand what's happening. The town has been enormously supportive. It's been a great community. Eric and Marianne has had experience in many places, including one other place in Maine. And not all places are as welcoming and as wonderful community as this one. And it's been great. Jim, do you want to say anything? Or okay.
I'll jump in with one additional fact. During the introductions at the beginning of the meeting, one local person raised in our community was not mentioned, but Brady Gers is in the room as well. She's an engineering student, and she was interning with CVMR in recent years and did lots of really great and beneficial work to this project. So it's certainly worth mentioning her and thanking her for her contributions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out anytime.
That's one way I